If you scroll through social media today, it feels like society is locked in a non-stop generational war. Boomers are blamed for hoarding wealth. Millennials are labeled burned out and entitled. Gen Z dominates conversations about identity, mental health, and the future. But there's one generation that almost never enters the argument. They're not trending. They're not shouting. They're not making viral threads. They're just watching. Generation X. Born roughly between 1965 and 1980, Gen X might be the most psychologically unique generation alive today, and possibly the most misunderstood. Because Gen X didn't grow up learning how to be seen. They grew up learning how to survive without being noticed at all. Picture this. It's 3:12 in the afternoon. The school bus drops you off. You walk home alone. You unlock the front door with a key hanging around your neck. The house is silent. No parents, no phones, no cameras. No one checking if you made it home safely. You make your own snack. You do your homework. If you get hurt, you deal with it. If you feel scared, you bury it. If you feel lonely, you don't even have the language to describe it yet. By the mid-1980s, millions of kids lived like this. They were called latchkey kids, and that environment quietly rewired their brains in ways that still shape them today. When you grow up learning that help isn't guaranteed, you don't just become independent. You become emotionally self-contained. You learn to solve problems quietly. You learn not to ask for too much. You learn that comfort is optional, but survival is not. That's the real origin of Gen X strength. But it's also the origin of their hidden loneliness. People often think Gen X is emotionally cold. The truth is more complicated. Gen X isn't cold. Gen X is compressed. They feel deeply, but they were raised in a culture that treated emotions like inconveniences. If you were sad, you were told to toughen up. If you were anxious, you were told to deal with it. So they learned emotional minimalism. They don't say, "I'm overwhelmed." They say, "I'm fine." They don't write emotional speeches about love. They fix your car. They show up when things fall apart. They handle problems before you even notice them. That's their version of vulnerability, because asking for help still feels like a language they were never taught to speak. And this created one of the most powerful and dangerous personality traits in modern society. Hyper-independence. Gen X doesn't think, "I can do this." They think, "I have to do this." Over time, that mindset builds incredibly capable adults. The people who stay calm during chaos. The ones who fix broken systems while everyone else argues about them. But it also builds walls. When you spend decades being the strong one, you eventually forget how to be supported. And that turns strength into a private prison. Then there's their famous cynicism. People call Gen X negative, but that's not quite true. Gen X grew up watching institutions collapse in real time. Watergate taught them leaders could lie. The Cold War taught them the future could disappear overnight. Corporate layoffs taught them loyalty doesn't guarantee safety. So Gen X developed something rare. A psychological BS detector. They don't trust hype. They don't fall for shiny promises. They respect authenticity even when it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly. Because to Gen X, a harsh truth feels safer than a comforting lie. They also hold a cognitive advantage no generation before or after them will ever fully share. Gen X was raised in two completely different worlds. Their childhood was analog. They memorized phone numbers. They read paper maps. They experienced boredom, and boredom forced creativity. Then, right as they entered adulthood, the digital revolution exploded. They didn't grow up with technology. They adapted to it. That makes Gen X psychologically bilingual. They can solve problems with apps or without them. They understand both slow thinking and instant thinking. They became the translators between generations, the bridge holding two completely different realities together. And bridges rarely get celebrated. They just carry weight. Today, Gen X sits in what psychologists call the sandwich generation. They're caring for aging parents while supporting children trying to survive in an economy that feels unstable. They entered adulthood as pensions disappeared. They lived through multiple economic crashes. They built careers during instability and are now expected to hold entire family ecosystems together. But here's what makes their burnout so dangerous. Gen X rarely collapses loudly. They don't broadcast breakdowns. They don't post emotional monologues online. They wake up, handle responsibilities, support everyone else, and quietly carry stress until their bodies eventually force them to stop. This creates something psychologists call high-functioning depression. You can be productive and still be drowning. You can be reliable and still feel invisible. And for Gen X, invisibility isn't just something that happened to them. It became part of their identity. Yet something interesting is happening now. As Gen X moves deeper into midlife, many are quietly rewriting their story. They're leaving careers that feel meaningless, starting businesses, creating art, simplifying their lives. Not because they suddenly became rebellious, but because they finally realized something powerful. They played the game exactly how they were told, and the prize wasn't worth the cost. For the first time, many Gen Xers are learning that independence doesn't mean isolation, that strength doesn't mean silence, that needing support doesn't mean weakness. It means healing. Generation X may never dominate headlines. They may never chase attention. But they are the generation that learned how to survive cultural collapse, technological revolution, and economic instability, all while raising families and holding society together quietly in the background. And maybe that's why they remain so invisible. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they learned early that the strongest people are often the ones who don't need to announce their strength at all. If this perspective made you see everyday people a little differently, subscribe to Psychology of Everyday People for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping how we think, live, and connect.